thank you so much for inviting me to put forward something. And actually, my response to the question, the way I understood it, the initial outline was, I took it as the arcane, religion, ritualistic practices, and that kind of fusion with the arts and artistic practice. And that, in myself, how that's manifested is in walking, a type of ritualistic walking that often gets termed psychogeography, a lot of the time because there's not a better word we can use, but doesn't really fully embrace the kind of width and the breadth of that experience. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about psychogeography without, not to make assumptions about what people do or don't know, and how that has, and my experiences of interacting with it over quite a long time. And then maybe, or hopefully what we'll do, I'll read a little bit of my work in practice. It's a book which is going to be published in the autumn, and I should actually be home writing it now. So that's quite a nervous thing to do, actually. That's terrifying, because I've only ever read books after they've been published, and most importantly, copy edited and proof edited. So this will be, I've got a pen with me to make corrections as I go. I have read it, it seemed okay. Anyway, psychogeography, the term psychogeography, it's attributed to a French situationist, Guy Debord. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Debord. In 1955, he wrote a wonderful poetic work called The Introduction to Critique of Urban Geography. And they were, the Situationists International were a bunch of unusual young men, really, who were very, very, very concerned and angry about planning, urban planning. And so his term, psychogeography, is the study of the specific effects of the geographical environment, whether consciously organized or not, on the emotions and behavior of individuals. The idea itself really is a little bit old. He sort of, Debord built on it from a brilliant but quite troubled individual called Ivan Chechklov. And he had written about this in 1953. He was also a member of the Situationist International. Unfortunately, he was committed to an institution, an asylum. So his work got cut off quite young. But he wrote in 1953, and this is quite beautiful, "All cities are geological. You can't make 3 steps without encountering ghosts bearing all the prestige of their legends. We move within a closed landscape whose landmarks constantly draw us toward the past. Certain shifting angles, certain receding perspectives allow us to glimpse original conceptions of space, but this vision remains fragmentary. It must be sought in the magical locales of fairy tales and surrealist writings, castles, endless walls, little forgotten bars, mammoth caverns, casino mirrors," which is really wonderful. It's this idea of looking for these moments of magic with a K, and glimpses of connection within a quite unsympathetic urban realm, bearing in mind that they're reacting to post-war modernism, brutalism, concrete. And here's a quote from Patrick Keeler. "Debord's psychogeography and the practice of derive or drift were techniques to explore and extend the imaginative, experiential qualities of urban and other landscapes as part of a wider attempt to achieve a revolutionary transformation of everyday life." So it's not just critiquing the built environment. It's not even about going for a walk. As one person called it, walking with attitude. It's about an entirely different way of living everyday life for everybody, both subjective, but then manifesting itself objectively in a revolutionary sense. It was, however, a deeply subjective experience out in its heart. The psychogeography that I was introduced to in the 90s was very much an English interpretation that exploited the fact that Debord noted that the adjective psychogeographical had a pleasing vagueness. When looking at the work of writers such as Ian Sinclair, who I hope you've all heard of, London Orbital, he walked around the M25. Alan Moore, famous for his comic books, but the writer of amazing works of place, The Voice of the Fire. Wow. I'm about to read his book, Jerusalem, if you wanted a connection back to religion. It's there in the title of his book, Jerusalem. And the wonderful filmmaker, Andrew Cotting, once of this part of the world. Andrew's journeys start often in the Deptford Creek. You'd say that the English psychogeography owes more to Alfred Watkins' The Old Straight Track, published in 1925, with its revolutionary theories about ley lines, and Elizabeth Gordon's The Prehistoric London, Its Mounds and Circles, published in 1914, which paints a vision of London as a sacred landscape and is a deeply, deeply religious book. She sees London as an analogue of Jerusalem, in the shape of the land, and she declares these 4 sacred holy mounds of London. And that's a walk I used to perform on the solstice with friends, and it's an incredible experience. It just gives you a completely different view of London. So in 2004, I saw Ian Sinclair in conversation with Will Self at the Hawksmoor-designed St. Luke's Church in Old Street. Sinclair acknowledged that although he had an awareness of De Boer, he picked up the term via Stuart Home and the London Psychogeographical Association. It gave him a convenient brand name for his obsession with the occult architecture of Nicholas Hawksmoor, ley lines, and what he termed nodules of energy. The choice of venue was apposite, as Sinclair waved his arms in the direction of the house where Milton lived, Blake's grave over the road in Bunhill Fields, and the 17th century plague pits. Sinclair talked of the Derive as being a purposeful stalk, travels that lie outside the schedule. It was also apt, due to its place in Sinclair's enormously influential book, Lud Heat, of 1975. Lost my place. That in many ways gave birth to this particular Anglo-Celtic brew of psychogeography, or what we might call the Earth Mysteries School of Psychogeography. In Lud Heat, Sinclair had dreamt up his own vision of London as a city of sacred alignments, this kind of heady mix of mythology, folklore, and history, powerful alignments embedded in the landscape of London. Sitting under a fig tree in Bunhill Fields beside the grave of William Blake, he told me, working as a parks gardener in the 1970s, Sinclair saw a connection between a series of sites set out along a straight line from Hawksmoor's St. Luke's obelisk through the graves of Blake and Bunyan in the nonconformist burial ground. Then Hawksmoor's other East End churches at Spitalfields, Wapping, and over the river in Greenwich. Thank you. The mic is too heavy for the mic stand, I think. Or is it gravitational energy from a ley line underneath the church? Obviously the latter. And if you go to the top of Greenwich Hill, you used to be able to see the alignment through these churches from the top of the hill until the building of Canary Wharf. We repeated this walk last year for the 50th anniversary of the publication of Lud Heat. And Lud Heat in itself links back to Elizabeth Gordon's book of 1914. The revival of the London Psychogeographical Association had been announced in 1993, which is a very significant year. It's the 14th year of the Tory rule, Margaret Thatcher's Tory rule, incredibly divisive. There'd been a renewed IRA bombing campaign, which had altered the mindset and the fabric of the country's urban centres as bombs were going off. I got knocked out of bed by one, actually, over in Hackney. This mood of decay and paranoia was brilliantly captured in Patrick Keeler's 1994 film, London, whereby an unseen narrator embarks on a series of journeys across the city with his friend Robinson. In the course of a study of the problem of London, Robinson engages in exercises in psychic landscaping and drifting and free association. When I came to apply some psychogeography of my own to a project in 2004, we were given some money by the Arts Council, which then seemed incredible to go wandering around the town of my birth, High Wycombe. I returned to a situationist variety. It seemed to fit, as the project was a response to the town centre's redevelopment. I also experimented with the practice of algorithmic derives, pioneered by Dutch psychogeographers social fiction, whereby derivers follow a simple instruction, such as first left, second right, second left, repeat. I used this in a program of lunchtime derives, where workers and students dropped their usual routines and went out to re-experience the town, jolted from their preconceived ideas of the streetscape by the algorithm, before returning to their economically productive lives, including students, actually. I nearly thought, well, does that apply to students? Of course it does, because you're part of a great engine that is a university. It was a deliberate act of defamiliarization. When talking about this 2 or 3 nights ago in a recent public conversation with Thelema teacher and Aleister Crowley expert Marco Visconti, he saw this as a form of ritual similar to religious and occult practices intended to enable the participant to shed their former selves and see through the veil. That project led me to discover a largely forgotten tradition of early 20th century topographical writing, or what I came to see as a form of proto-psychogeography, written by a group of what I saw as tweed-wearing, jobbing Fleet Street journalists on their weekend off. It contained many of the same sentiments of the post-war French intellectuals. I'll read you a quote. The borderline between folklore and fairy tales is not more nebulous than that between topographical research and nosing about. That's from The Fringe of London by Gordon S. Maxwell, 1925. Discovering Maxwell's The Fringe of London had been an epiphany for me, realizing that there was a heritage for this odd practice of wandering around neglected streets, following the city's moods, tracking myths, retracing old paths, and uncovering forgotten histories. There are 2 ways of topographical hunting, Maxwell writes. One is to follow the scent of a clue, and the other is to go into the unknown to find what may be. Each way has its own charms and surprises. The way of the topographical rambler is sometimes hard, often muddy, usually interesting, but never dull. The way of the topographical rambler is like a creed, isn't it, or a credo? The way of the Shaolin, the way of the topographical rambler. In It Isn't Far from London by S.P.B. Mays in 1930, ostensibly a book of country rambles not far from the city, he laid out his idea of walking. There are 3 different types of walks, he said. Along the ridges, in order to be alone, commune with the spirits of the air and look down on humanity. Along the riverbank, to trace the history of the human race. Take to the green tracks through woods and over hills. He also wrote, the object of walking is to regain contact with the spirit of beauty, to commune with our souls and be still, to exorcise our demons. And this is a great bit from a book called England's Character. Again, it's just about places like Dorking and Weymouth. So make up your mind to be bound by no program, to travel with complete irresponsibility, to start nowhere in particular, and the odds are you will catch a glimpse of England that is vouchsafed only to the privileged few. What you are looking for is as elusive as the fairy music of the piper at the gates of dawn. What you may see may be incommunicable to others, but it will provide you with a vision that may well alter your whole outlook on life. And again, that's a book of weekend walks. Thank you. I like that this is the business of the mic stand becomes a thing. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. It gives me an opportunity to check the time. So 5 minutes, yeah. So so this is, I'll read 5 minutes of my new book. Could you actually put your hand up when I'm done? Is that all right? Okay, thank you. I won't be offended. So this is very much work in progress, and the context for this is, it's a book about rivers, but really it's become a book about my experience of walking rivers, if you know what I mean. So if you read the book, you could extract the places, but it's not like turn left, go right, over the bridge, you'll see something. And very quickly, as I'll read, you discover when you do these things, and people ask you why. If you meet other people, there's about 10 people that go around wandering around and making work. I make YouTube videos that I post on, every week, and I write blog posts and books. When you meet other people, they go, "Why are you going to, Avery Hill Park to walk the River Shuttle or the Wokebourne?" Wow. So in Leytonstone, we have a river called the Filly Brook, and I was supposed to be writing this book. It's due to be delivered in a month. And instead, I looked at a map, and I saw a little trace of blue on the map where there should be no trace of blue on a Google map. School-run traffic clogged James Lane. Buses with soft focus faces leant against the splattered window puddles. This was a waste of time. I was avoiding wading back through a decade and a half of notes by going back out there. I reached the scrub near the end of James Lane, close to where a body had been dumped in IKEA bags. I checked the Google map again. The Woodbury unit, this was the place. And there, by the road, leading into the hospital grounds, was a bridge. A fucking bridge. I let a car pass before documenting, photographing the bridge from all angles, then leaning over. There can't be water, surely. And I was almost relieved that there wasn't. Just a ditch bearing the usual offerings of blue carrier bags, lager cans, takeaway containers, but a ditch nonetheless. Then leaning over the other side, a definite and distinct grate under the bridge to carry a stream beneath the road. I gasped. I followed the course of the ditch back to the higher ground, back towards the hollow ponds, which boasts its very own bear, and reached the point where the water would run. I turned around to follow its course, to follow its underground route, and the memory re-emerged of the November day in 2009, or was it 2010, here with Nick Papadimitriou on the first hunt for the Filly Brook for our radio show. And it was here, after what at the time seemed like a false start, we arrived at this spot, and Nick declared it a watershed, and we agreed that this was the likely spot where the Filly Brook rose. It was great to be back where the Filly Brook journey began. That was what had driven me out here, as I sat at my desk to write it all down. It was not procrastination or displacement activity. I was being called by my own past. I sloshed across the sodden grass towards the spot I remembered as standing, and there, close to the traffic on Whipps Cross Road, was a large square manhole cover at the centre of a concrete omphalos. Close by was another smaller manhole cover, and next to it a small square hole in the ground going far, far below the surface, where a wee beastie lives, or perhaps it was the delivery chute for the deity of the river. It was peeing down with rain. 4:47 p.m, so it was just getting dark. It's gloomy. Sirens blare on Whipps Cross Road. Blue lights reflected on the rain-splattered pavement. This is where rivers rise. This text feels like a confession almost. The photographs from James Lane of the ditch and the bridge by the Woodbury NHS facility are the photographs of an obsession that could be used as exhibits in either a gallery, a court case, or a true crime magazine. I feel borderline euphoric, even if it is a wild goose chase. I'm once again convinced of the original hypothesis that this is the source of the river, despite all the stack of evidence here beside me to the contrary. Because if I've learned only one thing about river hunting, it's that these journeys are not just about the rivers. The rivers are our guides, our spirit guides to open up the landscape, making it an endlessly, endlessly fascinating pursuit.